remember not to believe the word I say. That's very important. And last week we discussed the history of the society and the different traditions which belong in the house. And so you saw how the Mevlevi tradition fits within the context of where you're learning it. So has anyone got any questions which have emerged during the week or emerged from your classes? Anything at all? Is anything you want to know?
Do the long-time turners that come here, do they tend to also do other practices that are being taught?
Some do, some don't.
Society?
Yeah, some do. When I came here, I learnt meditation first when I was 16. I was away at school, so then I had to wait till I was at art college because I learned the movements to music. So it was a series of temple dances. And then I had to wait even longer to be able to learn the dervish turning. So then I did all of them, and meetings and things. So it's very much up to you as an individual and what grabs you. So for me personally, it was wonderful having all these different practices to do. So I'd sort of come along on Monday for a big Dr. Rolls meeting and the movements to music. And on Thursday I'd come along for a group meeting. And then on Friday it was the dervish turning. And as a young person with lots of energy, that was wonderful. So it's very much what fits in with your particular lifestyle and what you feel deep inside you move to do. So it has to come from inside you. But some dervishes do lots of things, other dervishes belong to other traditions and other organisations and just come here for their dervish turning. So it's totally individual. Does that answer it?
Yes.
This might be a silly question.
I'm sure it won't be.
I was wondering what was the purpose of making the dance of the word in dervishes, if there was a purpose, and is it representing the philosophy also?
I'll go into that in massive detail for you in about 2 or 3 meetings' time, because I'll give the whole symbolism of the ceremony. But in a nutshell, the whole of the teaching that lies behind the Mevlevi tradition, in my opinion, is in the ceremony. So if you participate in the ceremony, you'll understand the whole teaching, but in a completely non-verbal way from your own direct experience. So in a way, if I was asked what's the purpose of the ceremony for you as an individual is all about accessing what I would call the great stillness and the great happiness which emerges from that great stillness. So it's about accessing your true being which lies behind your body and your psyche. And when you touch that, then you get this profound stillness and an unconditional happiness arises. So that, I would say, is what it's about.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah, I thought so. I just wanted to confirm.
But I'll give you. You can have every little bit of it has significance. None of it is random. So when we go through the ceremony, probably in about 2-3 weeks' time, I'll go through each bit of it for you and tell you what it signifies. But ultimately, turning in the macabre will give you your own direct knowledge and your own experience, and then it comes together in a way which is suitable for you as an individual. And it will inspire the rest of your life as well, whatever that might be. If it's on your movie to be a whirling dervish, of course, you might complete the training and say, I never want to see these people again, which is perfectly fine. Any other questions? Okay, in this meeting, I'm going to attempt to explain the unexplainable. And it's all about the teaching which lies at the heart of all the world's great wisdom traditions. And it's almost like all through history there's this tradition which has run down almost like a great underground river, and it keeps popping up at different times in different cultures, and it's basically exactly the same teaching, but it comes up with different metaphors and different practices. So it's almost like there's a great underground ocean, and there's all these wells that go down into the ocean, and there's a Christian well and a Islamic well and a Sufi well and a Zen Buddhist well and a Jewish well and a Taoist well and a Tibetan Buddhist well and a Zoroastrian well. And there's as many wells as there are people in the world, so there's millions and millions of wells. And when you get to the bottom of your particular well and you access the great ocean of stillness, then you also understand all the metaphors of all the other wells. So say your particular well is a Sufi well, and you follow the practices and emerge into the great ocean, then you'll also understand all the metaphors you'll see in the Christian tradition and the Buddhist tradition and every other tradition. So it's so brilliantly, almost like it's all encoded within parable and myth, and you suddenly see the significance of all the myths from all the different traditions, and you see that underneath the surface display it's all a total unity. And what Aldous Huxley referred to it as the perennial philosophy, and a perennial flower is a flower that comes up every year, and it's a perennial philosophy because it just keeps blossoming in all these different places. So you don't have to change religion or go down anyone else's well, because you've got your own path right in front of you. You've got your own well, your own direct route for realization of your own true self. And the actual teaching is normally called non-dualism, and all non-dualism means really is that there's not two things. In dualistic teachings you have a multiplicity of things, so like you have a good God and a devil and good and evil, and also a great multiplicity. In non-dualism it's just like there's the one being which is manifesting as the whole of creation. So creation, the world, the 200 billion galaxies is all, from this point of view, the manifestation of the one being. And the way all of us fit into it is there are some very good metaphors. There's a Rumi metaphor that the one mind, the absolute, gets a bit bored just being the absolute on its own, the one enough undifferentiated. So the American philosopher Ken Wilber says, why manifest a creation? Because it's no fun having dinner alone. So the absolute wants to becomes a multiplicity in order to experience itself in a way. So, excellent metaphor from Ken Wilber. He says it's as if the absolute is sitting there with a game of checkers in front of it, and it wants to have a game. So here's the absolute on this side of the board, and it makes its move. It moves the checker piece, and then when there's just one of you, it's very difficult to have a game. So what the absolute has to do is then go around the other side of the board and make the opposing move in the game of checkers. But the downside of that is, because it's the absolute playing both sides of the game, when it goes around and makes that move, it has to forget that it's the absolute. So it has to have almost what you might call divine hypnosis, to forget that it is actually already the absolute. So then it makes that move on the checkerboard, and then it comes back round to this side and remembers it's the absolute and makes the opposing move. And so the game goes on like that. And Rumi in the Mathnavi uses the analogy of a game of backgammon. So I've got a little bit somewhere where he says that. He says, when man and woman become one, thou art that one. When the units are wiped out, lo, thou art that unity. Thou didst contrive this I and we, in order that thou mightst play the game of worship with thyself. For all I's and thous should become one soul, and at last be submerged in the beloved. So that's Rumi putting the same thing in Rumi words. So it's such a devastatingly simple teaching. It's so devastatingly simple that it's very easy to miss it completely, because we tend to look for complexity and we want something profound and mystical to be very remote and complex. But with non-dualism, it's a bit like the Rumi analogy of the fish who heard about this stuff called water and then went off swimming to try and find it. So they thought it was funny. So it's like consciousness is everything, and it's not only what you are, but it's also what everyone else is and everything is, and the carpet is and the tables and everything is all the manifestation of the same thing. Yet for the drama of life to happen, we have to forget what our true identity is. So we start to experience ourselves as separate individuals in a separate universe, and we're interacting with other separate individuals, and that enables the dance to continue. But then at a certain point you start to get intimations that you're actually not separate, and it's almost like there's this return journey back into the realization of who you are and who you've always been. So that's the big central idea, and if you can remember one thing, let it be that everything from the point of view of his teaching, and again, don't believe anything I say, so if you don't see it like that, that's perfectly how it should be. But from the point of view of the teachings that underlie our traditions, like the Mevlevi and the Advaita, and in my experience Christian and all great traditions, underlying it is this essential concept of the unity of everything. And there's a couple of pieces which I quite like reading, because for me they sum up the essence of the teaching. But you could go to any scripture and you'll find the same thing expressed. And this is a poem from a 16th century poet called Sayyid Nizamoglu, and it's called The Path of Amazement. I cannot say who it is I am amazed, I am amazed. I cannot call this self myself, I am amazed, I am amazed. Who is in my eyes seeing? Who is in my heart enduring? Who is inhaling and exhaling? I am amazed, I am amazed. Who is speaking with my tongue? Who is listening with my ears? Who is understanding with my mind? I am amazed, I am amazed. Who is stepping with these feet? Who is tasting with my mouth? Who is chewing and who swallowing? I am amazed, I am amazed. Who holds these riches in his hand? Who is the one throwing them away? Who is buying and who selling? I am amazed, I am amazed. Why is there life coursing below my skin? Why are my eyes bloodshot from crying? Why this religion, why this faith? I am amazed, I am amazed. O Sayyid Nizamoglu, hear this, everything comes from the One. Abandon yourself to this mighty beauty. I am amazed, I am amazed. And then just jumping into another tradition, which again says exactly the same thing, and this is called The Wondrousness of These Teachings, and this was written by an Indian saint called Padmasambhava, and he's also known in Tibet as Guru Rinpoche, and it was him who introduced Buddhism into Tibet. So this is him saying the same thing from another tradition. This self-originated clear light, eternally unborn, is a parentless babe of wisdom. Wondrous is this. Being non-created, it is natural wisdom. Wondrous is this. Not having known birth, it knows not death. Wondrous is this. Although it is total reality, there is no perceiver of it. Wondrous is this. Although wandering in the samskara, it remains undefiled by evil. Wondrous is this. Although seeing the Buddha, it remains unallied to good. Wondrous is this. Although possessed by all beings, it is not recognized. Wondrous is this. Those not knowing the fruit of this yoga seek other fruit. Wondrous is this. Although the clear light of reality shines within one's own mind, the multitude look for it elsewhere. Wondrous is this. I adore that, especially where he says, although possessed by all beings it is not recognized. Wondrous is this. Because that's going back to the idea of the not remembering, the not knowing what your true identity is just another part of the dance of manifestation, which again is what the macabre symbolises, the whole dance of creation. But as we saw in the game of checkers analogy, in order for a manifest creation to take place, you have to forget your true identity. So ignorance is just another stage of knowledge. It's not something bad which has come in and messed up a perfect picture. So in the Indian traditions they call that divine hypnosis Maya. So it's like the power of illusion. So it's the power that you, the true self, the one mind, perceives the external world as an external world, as separate and divided, and then this drama can take place, the drama of multiplicity. But then again, as Rumi points out, at a certain point it's almost like a return to source begins to take place. And I tried to illustrate it very symbolically just in that circle diagram, which you can take that on many levels, but you could, it's also the turning circle in the macabre, which is technically known as the Samahane. And in the turning circle, as we'll explain, there's the first side of the circle is the outflow from one into many. So that's like the one mind manifesting as a creation of 10,000 things. And then there's a dividing line down the centre, which again in the turning circle you have this invisible line which only the sheikh is allowed to actually walk on. And then there's the other side of the circle is the return to source. So in our journey through life, it's a bit like we come out of total unity and we suddenly find ourselves in this world of of multiplicity, and we build up our different sort of layers of personality. At first, when you're born, there's absolute total unity, so psychologists say. You don't differentiate yourself between I and other, or yourself and your siblings and your parents. But then, as you progress through life, it's necessary to develop a healthy sense of ego, if you call it. Ego is just Latin for I. And to function in the world, you need a healthy sense of being a separate self, of relating to other people, relating to your parents and your school friends. So as you go on through life, we sort of gradually superimpose these different identities on top of one, what I would call true being, which is sometimes referred to as just your basic sense of I am, or your basic sense of isness. And so you go on building these up, and you have all these different identities, like you might think, well, basically you're a man or a woman. So in my case, I'm a man, so I say I'm a man. And I'm called Philip. Then I think, oh, I'm an artist. I think I am an artist. I think, oh, I'm a whirling dervish. So I'm a whirling dervish. And I think, oh, I'm a dinosaur hunter. So, and I get very proud of that and think I dig up dinosaurs. And so you get all this, it's like superimposition on top of your basic identity. And then it's almost like at a certain point in life, as you get older, things start falling away again. So you've built up all these different identities, and then, for instance, you might have a wonderful job title. I was once design director of a big textile company, and I was very proud of my title. And one day I got the sack, and hey presto, it had all suddenly that identity had gone. So then it's almost like there's a letting go process, and different identities fall away. And then it's almost like you come back into the basic, you re-acknowledge the basic underlying sense of I am. And the basic sense of my I am is exactly identical to your I am. At that level of identity, it's a total unity. Where we differ is at the lesser identity of I am something. And Rumi has the most wonderful metaphor, which again appears in many traditions, and it's in his epic poem, the Masnavi, and it's all about a man who lived in Baghdad, and he kept having this dream, a repetitive dream. There was an amazing treasure hidden in a particular house in Cairo, and he had the dream so often that eventually he decides to set off on an adventure to Cairo to try and locate the house and try and locate the treasure. And on the way to Cairo he has all sorts of adventures, some are nice, some are traumatic, and eventually he gets to Cairo and he wanders the streets and he bumps into a man while he's wandering, and the man from Cairo tells him about his dream and about his quest. And the man from Cairo says, well, that's quite a big coincidence, because I keep on dreaming there's this amazing treasure hidden in a particular house in Baghdad. And he describes the house, and the man from Baghdad realizes that it's his own house which is being described. So he goes back to Baghdad and looks down in the basement, digs there and finds this amazing treasure. And what that story for me is a metaphor for is that you have to say yes to the journey of life, and you set out on this amazing adventure, very varied. Sometimes it's blissful, sometimes it's totally traumatic. And because you embark on this dance, you eventually come to the realization that what you're looking for is already in your own self. It's already in your own basement. It's already who you are. It's already looking out through your eyes. There's nothing obscuring it. It's totally fully formed, and it's the great treasure. It's the thing you've always been wanting and looking for. So I think that's a brilliant story from Rumi of how you have to say yes to the dance of life, and how in a tremendous roundabout way your life path is like your own individual path of yoga, especially designed for you, which will take you back to the realization of your own true identity. And your own true identity is totally without boundary, so it's totally universal. It is boundaryless. And at death, the death of the physical body, if you've either had your own near-death experience, or you've studied other people's near-death, or you've been with relatives who are dying, it's like the analogy they use in the Vedic tradition of a bottle of Ganges water being put in the Ganges and then breaking, and the water mingling again with the whole Ganges. So in the near-death experience, at a certain point, it's like your identity becomes totally universal. So it's like you expand out into the whole of the cosmos, and rather than experiencing yourself as a speck within a vast cosmos, you experience the whole cosmos as something contained within you. So again, Rumi uses that analogy a lot in his metaphors about the ney flute and its longing to return home to the unified state. And Rumi refers to the unified state as the beloved. And there's another sort of metaphor I've done here. Because it's inexplicable, and I'm using similes and metaphors to try and tackle an inexplicable subject, ultimately, again, it's all down to your own direct experience. But I found, again, this as the journey of life quite interesting. You can either have it down there as a diagram, or you can stick the same thing on a circle. So again, you've got pre-rational unity of a baby. So that's like the pre-birth state and early birth state, when rational language hasn't developed, and yet you have this experience of a total unity. You're part of everything around you. You haven't yet differentiated yourself between self and other. But it's not an empathetic unity, because babies don't care if they wake you up in the middle of the night by crying. They don't say, I won't cry tonight because you need a good sleep. They just carry on crying. And then as you start to grow, as we've mentioned, you start to develop a sense of a separate self. And the word ego, I remember my own teacher, Dr. Rolls, pointing this out. Ego gets a terribly bad press in spiritual traditions. But all ego simply means, it's Latin for I. So all it is your basic sense of I. And your sense of I is almost like a spectrum or a sliding scale. So it can be very narrow if you just identify with body or psyche, or if you identify with your basic sense of I am, it can expand to include the whole cosmos. So nothing wrong with ego, and at a certain point Dr. Earls said there's to be no more stamping on egos. I was very pleased to hear him say that. So all you have to do is enlarge your ego so much that you realise that it encompasses absolutely everything and includes everyone, and there's no other egos beyond your ego, because we're all the same ego. Anyway, at this stage, you're just starting to develop your sense of separation. Now that's wonderful, because you can relate to other separate egos in the drama of life. Where it's not so fun is being separate. You then enter a realm of both pleasure and pain. So when things go in a way that appeals to you in life and you're very happy, when life becomes traumatic, then you start to experience pain. So in your journey through life as a something, I am something, so that's like I am a man, I'm a Philip, I'm an artist. It's a lovely drama, but it's both pleasure and pain. And when you have enough pain in particular, then you start to look for something which is beyond suffering, because all along you've got this distant memory in the back of your mind of the total unity, of the unified state. And the memory of the unified state drives all your ambitions in life. So I think if I had a bigger house, I'd be really happy. Or if I got a faster car, a bigger boot, then I'd be really happy. Or if I find an even bigger dinosaur bone, then I'll be really happy. And when you find the huge dinosaur bone, it makes you happy for a while. And then, but again, it wears off and the longing comes back. So then you have to find another even bigger dinosaur bone, and so it goes on. So at a certain point, you start to look inwards. It's almost like the seeking for happiness outside yourself solely exhausts itself, and you might learn a technique of meditation or yoga or prayer, or whatever you're drawn to, even just developing your talents in life and doing the things you love. And you find that behind your psyche, behind your thinking and feeling, there's almost like this great ocean of emptiness. It's like you thought you were this separate identity, and suddenly, where's it gone? It's almost like there's nothing there. It's just like a great voidness. And quite a few traditions actually stop at this point, which is a shame, because it leads to quite a nihilistic view of life, that nothing has any purpose, there's no, nothing exists, and so you don't stop there, you go on, because beyond that, beyond I don't exist, you find that what appeared to be a nothingness is actually a great ocean of everything, and it includes absolutely everything. So your own true nature, which appeared as total emptiness, total stillness, turns out to be a total fullness. And with that knowledge and with that experience, then it's rather like what Ken Wilber describes as you find a new duty in consciousness. It's almost like your role in the big life drama, it carries on just the same, but it's almost like you're illumined from inside, and it's almost like you're dancing this dance just purely for the joy of it. And then that starts to illuminate all sorts of other people. So that one I call empathetic unity, because it's no longer the pre-rational unity of a baby. With this one you're full of empathy and concern for the whole of creation and everything within it, because you see everything is as yourself. There's no difference between you and the worms and the earwigs and all your neighbours and all the different people and all the animals and all the trees and everything else. So it's an experience of total unity, no boundary, and that in a way is non-dualism. So that's not two. But non-dualism isn't a state you acquire, because you already are non-dual. You already are the great oneness. The great oneness right now is already fully formed, looking out through your eyes and hearing through your ears. And that's quite a bit to swallow. Any questions on that so far?
I was wondering where destiny's case theory, where destiny
Oh, destiny.
is here, because if we are manifestation, which means that everything manifested us, but I think that I also have the free will, which there is no free will actually. Anything happening is happening through this manifestation, so there is no choice also. We don't choose to do anything, it happens as it is, and how?
I'm not going to answer that question fully yet.
Yeah, it is confusing.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I'm going to give you a possible answer, but if I say how I see it, you'll probably all start shouting at me. I don't want to do that just yet. But what I would say is, first of all, from your own direct experience, and this is very important, you have to discover whether you actually exist as a separate self, or whether you're just the total unity. But you have to do that for yourself. Now, if you exist as a separate self, then fine, yes, you can do exactly what you want. And I can say, I think I might lift my hand, there we go, now I'll put it down again, there we go. And that would appear to be an example of free will. Yeah? But if you don't exist as a separate self, and there's just the total unity, then the total unity is still saying, I have to lift my arm and put it down again. So it's, in my experience, before you can solve for yourself the problem of whether there's free will or whether there's preordination, you have to first ask and understand the question, who am I? Is there a separate me to have free will, or is there just me, which is the total unity, so there's one will rather than multifarious wills? So what I'm asking you to do is just seek that realization first of all, whether you exist separate or whether you are the total unity. So whether there's myriads of wills or whether there's one will. Later on in this cycle of meetings I'll tell you a bit more how I see it, but it's important that you discover it for yourself in a way which is suitable for you. I don't want to just tell you how I see it. I want you to find what's right for you and what's true for you. Because what's true for me might be different as to what's true for you. I can give you just a hint of how I see it, but don't get angry with me if it's not how you see it. In my own journey for life, through life, obviously I'm sort of been born with all my different emotions and my character and different things I've desired. And as I've gone through life, I've seen different things I really wanted. It's like when I was a teenager, I was always falling in love. I'd think, oh, I so want that girlfriend, and I so want that I want my work to be with that company. And often the things I really wanted didn't happen. And at the time, my understanding was different, and I'd get really upset about it and sometimes cross and think, but she was so perfect. But as you live life, and you look back at it from a bigger perspective, I can now see, and I think, my God, I'm so pleased I never got together with her. It would have been an absolute disaster. But then the person who was actually right for me was there waiting further down the line. So fortunately, I don't know how it worked, but I wasn't allowed to go off on these terrible detours. I had 1 or 2 terrible detours, but you very quickly get put back on this track, and there you have your, for me, was a date with destiny. And then you find the person who actually is meant for you is infinitely more suited than all the different people I thought were suited for me, because I didn't see the whole picture. I only saw a tiny little picture. And my life's gone on like that. It happened with work as well. I think, but that company is so good, they should love my work. And you sort of walk away almost in tears holding your portfolio, go home again with no money again. And then years on, the most best company ever, but it didn't exist then, so you have to wait for it's almost like the meeting is there for you. So that's just my experience of how I've seen life. So having seen that a lot, it then gives you a deep inner trust of the process of life. And in the Indian Vedic tradition, they call that Shraddha. And Shraddha translates really as faith based on direct experience. There's faith because someone's told you something's going to happen, or there's faith like you know the sun's going to rise every morning because it always has done. So that's why, again, for you, it goes back to observing your life, observing your direct experience, and then you'll see how it works for you. But this is how it's worked just for me, is I learned from experience that I can actually hand it over. You do your best. Rumi says, trust in God, but tie the knee of your camel. So the fact you're trusting God doesn't mean you can let your camel run riot. If you don't tie it up, it's still going to run away. So at a relative level, you do what's appropriate. You take the appropriate action. You act as if it's total random universe and you have to do your very best. But once you do that, you give over the results to something much larger than you, and you'll be very surprised what happens. But it may not happen in the order in which you think it should happen. But when you look back on your life, when you're quite old, I think you'll think, wow, that was just brilliant. It was so well composed. It's like, who could have come up with such a brilliant script? Does that help at all? Yeah, thank you. Great question. It's my favourite question, but I'm very frightened of answering it.
Philip, is the ego with a capital E the same as the soul?
I'll explain that more when we do the 4 levels next week, because soul is such a brilliant concept. Ego means I, so I did Latin at school, and when you want to give something away, you shout quiz, you hold it up, shout quiz, and all the other kids, the first kiddie in the form to shout ego, I, gets given the thing you're giving away. That's an old thing we used to do in the 1950s. Did you do it? You hold up, say you're a kiddie in school and you want to give away your pen in the class, you shout the word, we used to shout the word quiz, which means who in Latin. Then the first kiddie to shout ego, which is I, gets given whatever it is you're giving away. So what I'm saying is ego is just Latin for I, and your sense of I is like a spectrum. So there's only one ego really, and that's behind your eyes is this basic sense of I am, being. In Sanskrit they call it aham, but it has to manifest in creation through a vehicle. So all of us are the vehicles. So your mind-body mechanism is the vehicle for your basic sense of aham or I. So there's only one ego, big E, but going through your vehicle, mind-body, so that's body and psychology, you, as a player in the drama, become forgetful that who you really are is the big ego with a capital E, and you start to think that either this, flesh and bones, which is body, is I, or your psyche, that's your thinking, feeling process, is I. And in the mystical traditions, that misidentification of self with the vehicle is what's known as false I, or false ego. So Joseph Campbell says something similar about that, about how it's important not to identify with the vehicle of consciousness rather than with the consciousness itself. So what, again, the near-death investigations are showing that it's more like all of our individual mind-body vehicles are more like radio transmitters for this universal consciousness or universal ego or universal I, which then we receive like radio transmitters through the vehicle. But in the state of identification with the movie of life, and this is a necessarily part of the stage, we identify sense of self with mind and body, but really that's just the vehicle of ego, and your true ego is what's listening and seeing right now.
So what is the soul?
The soul, in the, I'm going to explain that much more next week, but just a quick preview, you have what's known in Sanskrit as subtle and causal level. So you've got physical body, then you've got, that's contained within what's known as the subtle body, which is your psyche. So psyche is thinking and feeling, it's a realm of experience. And again, that's contained within what's known as causal body, which is, it divides into two parts, but basically it's like an enfolded blueprint of unmanifest potential.
What does blueprint mean?
Blueprints like architects have a blueprint when they have a sort of drawing of the whole building they're going to design.
A map.
A map. It's like a map. It's like an enfolded map. Physicist David Bohm calls it the implicate order, so it's like it's enfolded. And so, old Christian church, they had body, soul, spirit. Modern Christian church, they had body, soul, and God's over there somewhere. So with body, soul, spirit is not only your deepest identity, it's also God. So it's a brilliant non-dual concept. And soul is like, in Sanskrit they call it antakarana, which means inner vehicle. Car is those big temple chariots on wheels they push around the village on saints' days. So it's like car, ahankar is the vehicle, for it's your inner vehicle, but it's not ultimately who you are. So soul equates with the Indian concept of antakarana, or inner vehicle. So it's still a vehicle for consciousness, but it's not physical flesh and bones, it's more subtle.
So do we all have individual souls, or is there a universal soul? I mean, is my soul different from yours?
At that level, using that terminology, using both the Christian body, soul, spirit and the Indian physical, subtle, causal, at that level there's still individuality.
So when we work I mean, for instance, you know, you do religious practices or spiritual practices, or you try to, you know, to get more towards whatever you think to get enlightened or whatever. That is done on an individual.
I'll be coming on to that next week, but the individual antakarana, it's more or less transparent or opaque. And I'm going to embarrass Annie here. We gave an example of Annie being very full of light last week. It's like the practices we do here in other traditions. I'm going to explain this technically next week. But your inner vehicle, your soul, if you like, it becomes transparent. So it's like you become a transparent vehicle for consciousness. And that's the symbolism of the posture you're learning at the moment, is receiving there and giving there. And it goes through the heart on the way. So it's like you become transparent. You just become, and any creative artist will tell you this, when you create art, your ideas, you don't generate your ideas, they just suddenly come through you and think, oh my God, where did that come from? And it's the same with great science. Great science doesn't happen when you're thinking, it happens when you're not thinking, and it comes by revelation between the thoughts. So it's like the practices we do here, and it's almost the basis of our way and tradition in this society, is that your inner vehicle, it's also in India called samskar or samskara, it becomes not opaque but transparent. So you've still got your individual colour as your manifestation in the drama, but it's like it has this great light behind it. You know the flavour of it. It's almost like something's coming through you, it's not you as an individual. But I'll come next week and I'll do it in detail. I don't want to keep you up too long because you've had a busy time here.
And what is the difference between our soul and our higher self?
Your higher self, yeah. That's more or less the question I was asking there. Paola was asking. And I'm going to cover it. I don't want to do it too much this week or I'll spoil next week for you. Shall I do it next week in detail? Yeah.
To what you was talking just before, being about your will and universal will, and how to know where there is universal will works for you, or you just being fatalistic, or is it the same?
I'll answer that another week. It's so big a question. I don't want to sort of embark on it at this point in the meeting. It's my very favourite question. I adore it. And it's sort of living life and having all these different traumas. And if you observe your life very closely, you see how things work. It's amazing. You see how what does work and what doesn't work, and you begin to understand the mechanics of it. And I'm told, I don't know if this is true or not, but one of the reasons for our particular individual dramas on this earth is because this is the place where you learn from direct experience. And then you can answer your own questions. But I've definitely, for myself, just observing my life, I've seen for myself how it works and how it's unfolding. And then, as I say, I just think, wow.
So when we discuss all that, will you also talk about karma?
I will talk about karma if you like, yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Philip, would you say that the mind and the soul are the same thing?
It depends what word you use for mind. In Buddhism, they talk about mind with a capital M, and that refers to universal mind, so that's the universal consciousness. In the terminology I'm mainly using, which is Vedic, Advaita Vedanta, the mind has various different components which I can explain, and so part of the soul includes mind. But it's all very much a matter of linguistics, because different traditions, words mean different things. But I'll go into it in more detail next week.
Very complicated.
It's not, it's so simple. All you have to know is that everything is the same thing. Everything is one consciousness. That's all there is. Everything you encounter is the dance of oneness manifesting. In the Islamic tradition, the word Allah, I'm told, translates roughly as the not, or the no, or the no thing. And it's not a thing, because anything which is a thing is something you can observe. So to be able to observe a thing, there has to be a thing to observe it. With Allah, because it's everything, there's nothing outside of it to observe it. So it's a no thing. So it's a wonderful concept, but it also it's a model of direct experience. So that's why I said I'm going to try to explain the inexplicable, and it's difficult to explain, isn't it, Annie? It's difficult to explain.
I think one of the things that we all have from when we're growing up, we have an idea of there's something is missing. We have a nostalgia for something we don't know what. And in my case, I used to think, I want to know what is truth. Not what I think is truth, but what is truth in itself. And I think we all have this, it's like an arrow which takes us gradually through our life. We can forget it for years and it can come back again. I think everybody probably has experienced it.
Can I read you just a bit of Rumi to finish on? Then you can go home to bed. And this is Rumi saying the same thing in Rumi language. It's from the Masnavi. And it's a commentary on, and he is with you wheresoever ye be. Once more we come back to the tale. When indeed did we go forth from the tale? If we come to ignorance, that is his prison. And if we come to knowledge, that is his palace. And if we come to sleep, we are his intoxicated ones. And if to wakefulness, we are in his hands. And if we weep, we are a cloud laden with the bounty dispensed by him. And if we laugh, at that time we are his lightning. And if we come to wrath and war, 'tis the reflection of his might. And if to peace and forgiveness, 'tis the reflection of his love. Who are we? In this tangled complex world, what thing other than he, indeed hath he, who is single like Aleph? Nothing, nothing. Okay, we'll do more next week. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it recorded?
It's recorded.